I thought I would stay with Asher for the rest of my life, but we went our separate ways in the 15th year of our marriage. On the day I got my divorce certificate, I went back to the age of 22, the year when Asher and I were deeply involved in an ambiguous relationship. This time, I decided to keep my distance from him, but unexpectedly, Asher also came back with memories. He just wouldn't let go. When I went to a hotel room with someone else, he smoked cigarettes all night long outside the door. Looking at his humble appearance, I said sarcastically, Asher, anyway, love has an expiration date for anyone. So why must I love you? The bond between Asher and me finally came to an end in the 15th year after our marriage. I couldn't bear his perfunctory attitude and being busy day after day, and he couldn't bear my demands for his attention and emotional support. I didn't understand why, as time passed, his love became less and less, so little that I almost thought that his affectionate appearance towards me was just an illusion. He didn't understand why, after being together for so long, we still had to be so clingy and couldn't give each other space to do more meaningful things. I asked Asher, what are more meaningful things? Is loving each other and managing our marriage meaningless? Asher was filled with helplessness and impatience in his breath. Here we go again, Serena. I've never said that I don't love you, but my life can't be all about loving you without caring about anything else, right? I was angered by his words, but now you are taking care of everything except loving me. Your job is more important than me, your personal space is more important than me, the children are more important than me, and your friends are also more important than me. You indeed never said that you don't love me, but your current behavior makes me unable to feel your love at all. Serena, what's wrong with you? You weren't so unreasonable before. Asher rubbed his eyebrows, looking exhausted. Asher, you didn't treat me like this before either. I admit that compared to before, I might have neglected you a bit, but Serena, no one's love can always stay at its peak, you know? I was stunned for a moment, feeling as if the blood in my whole body had frozen. But Asher, my love for you has always been at its peak. It was also you who once promised me with your own mouth that you would love me more than ever every day. Finally, I heard the answer from him. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was also something I had thought about. Maybe he didn't stop loving me, but surely, he didn't love me as much as before. His passionate love also had an expiration date. Let's get a divorce, Asher. After so many quarrels, it was the first time that I proposed divorce. My tone was extremely calm, and Asher knew that it was a sign that I had made up my mind. His pupils shrank slightly. He stared at me tightly for quite a while before asking in a hoarse voice, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure. Unlike you, I got married because I originally thought that we would always love each other like that. There's no point in continuing a marriage that has changed. I really don't understand what I've done for you to be like this." Asher got angry. He stopped halfway through his words, then nodded and compromised. "All right, if you want a divorce, then let's get divorced. It's really meaningless to keep quarreling like this. I'll move out for a while. Just let me know when the divorce agreement is ready and I'll sign it." He picked up his coat and slammed the door as he left, without a single word of persuasion to make me stay. Feeling that uncontrollable sense of loss in my heart, I laughed at myself sarcastically. Yeah, Serena, what are you still expecting? He's no longer the Asher who would rush back from abroad overnight to find you if he couldn't reach you for half a day. He's no longer the Asher who would abandon everything and hold your hand tightly, promising that he would remove all obstacles and that you could always trust him as long as you had the slightest hesitation about this relationship. The divorce procedures went very smoothly. Asher was trying his best to be decent with me in the end. He didn't have any objections to the divorce agreement I drafted. He didn't fight with me for the custody of the children either, and he even gave me an extra alimony payment. In his words, "I've thought a lot during this period. I probably know where the problems in our marriage lie. I might have really broken my promise. I'm very sorry, Serena. If you have any needs in the future, you can come to me. Even if you want to remarry, I can agree." I raised my hand to stop him and said faintly, "Don't worry, there's no such possibility. You're completely free now." On the day I got the divorce certificate, I wasn't sad at all. It meant the end of my relationship with Asher, and it also meant that I would have an unknown new life to embrace. Loving life and challenging the unknown, that's the real me, Serena. Rather than staying in the besieged city of marriage and being a bitter woman, thinking day in and day out whether that man still loves me or not, Asher came by car on his own and offered to give me a ride. I didn't refuse, but then we had a car accident on the way. At the moment when the car was overturned, looking at the white light in front of me, I thought bitterly, well, now I've wasted my whole short life on Asher. I didn't expect that I could wake up again. When I opened my eyes again, my mother was knocking vigorously on my bedroom door, urging me to go out for breakfast. Hurry up, Serena. Didn't you make an appointment with Asher to go play in the neighboring city? Hurry up. Look at the time. My mind was in a mess. I got up blankly, got dressed, listened to my mother's chatter while having breakfast, and then took a taxi to Asher's house. On the way, I thought for a long time and finally realized that I didn't die in that car accident but went back to the year when I was 22. That year, I graduated from university, and Asher and I developed from childhood friends to an ambiguous stage. We had agreed that after graduation, he would take me to play in the neighboring city when he was free, and it was also there that we confirmed our romantic relationship. Undeniably, the next few years were the time when Asher and I loved each other most passionately, and also the most beautiful memories. But, I didn't want to experience it again. Anyway, the result was just like that. There was no need to keep hanging on to one person. While I was thinking, the taxi had already stopped in front of Asher's house. I stood there hesitating for a moment and decided to go back the way I came. But the driver stepped on the accelerator and drove away quickly. I was just about to get out and take another taxi when I heard Asher's mother's voice from behind. Serena, you're here? Why are you standing at the door? Come in quickly. Before I could say the words of refusal, Auntie had already enthusiastically come over and pulled me into the house. Are you going to play in the neighboring city with Asher today? Just wait a moment. That kid got up late today and is still getting dressed. I hesitated to speak. Just then, Asher came downstairs. He was still in his pajamas and obviously hadn't started getting dressed yet. I was just about to speak again when Asher apologized to me and said, I'm afraid we can't go today. I'm not feeling well. Auntie frowned. What's wrong with you? You look fine to me. Asher covered his lips and coughed a few times. His face did look a bit pale. I quickly said, Auntie, it's okay. I came here also to tell him that we can't go today. I have other things to do. Asher was stunned for a moment, looking a bit surprised. What do you have to do? I couldn't give him a good look when I saw him now, so I replied perfunctorily, my own private affairs. Asher's mother came to her senses. Oh, I see. Well, it's okay. It'll be the same if we go next time. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. But Serena, you could have just sent a message. It's so troublesome to come here specially to say that you can't go. I was choked for a moment and smiled awkwardly. I thought it would be more polite this way. Asher was surprised again. Since when have you been so polite? I was too lazy to pay attention to him. I greeted Auntie and left in a hurry. I didn't expect that Asher would also suggest not going. Last time, he wasn't sick. But whatever. It was just what I wanted. What would life be like without Asher? I had never thought about this question before, because Asher and I were so closely connected in life. We grew up together since childhood and knew everything about each other. After we started dating, we were even more inseparable, and we had a 15-year marriage. Asher had been involved in most of my life, so much so that I had become used to him being like a part of my body. But now I'm only 22 years old, and I can freely imagine what life would be like without Asher. This time, I didn't go out to play with Asher, but it didn't change my travel plan. Last time, after graduating from university, my classmates invited me to join them on their graduation trip, but I refused because I had already made an appointment with Asher first. This time, I could make up for the regret of missing the trip with my classmates. My roommate said she was surprised that I would go, and also said that Felix wasn't going to go at first, but after seeing in the group that I was going, he took the initiative to contact them. Felix? Hearing this name, I felt a brief sense of unfamiliarity, and then I remembered that he was a very popular boy in our class. He was quite good-looking and studied well, but I didn't have much interaction with him, and my memory of him was rather vague. So after hearing what my roommate said, I didn't take it to heart and just smiled and said it was a coincidence. Maybe he didn't have much impression of me either, so how could he decide whether to go or not because of me? But later things quickly made me take back my words. In just over a week of the trip, Felix and I got to know each other surprisingly quickly. Probably because he always showed up beside me whether we were in the car or having meals. He was always the first to offer a helping hand when I needed help, and he could always notice the changes in my various emotions in no time. As a result, I couldn't help but notice this boy. One day when climbing a mountain, I sprained my ankle. Felix stayed with me to deal with the injury and even offered to carry me down the mountain back to the hotel to rest. I looked at him for a while and asked curiously, "Felix, do you like me?" Felix was stunned for a moment, and his fingers curled slightly. "Did I offend you?" "No, I'm just curious and asking casually." Most of my experience in getting along with the opposite sex came from Asher. I thought I didn't have much interaction with Felix, but after observing these days, it seemed that he really came to this trip because of me. I, indeed, like you. Felix, like his name, was always gentle, polite, rational and calm. But at this moment, his face turned red, and he explained a bit anxiously, "But I don't want to cause you any trouble. I know you have someone you like." I have someone I like? I interrupted him and asked with a smile, "Who do I like?" Felix lowered his head, looking a bit dejected. "I know there's a guy who often comes to school to look for you. Your roommate said that you two are very close. She also said that originally you were going to travel alone with him this time." "That? He's just a good friend I grew up with since childhood," I said casually. "We had originally planned to travel together, but he fell ill." What you said just reminded me. Now that we've all grown up, I should also keep my distance from him to avoid misunderstandings. Felix was both surprised and delighted. "Then, can I like you?" I tilted my head. "Is your liking something I can control? I mean, I'm afraid my feelings will make you dislike me." "I don't dislike you." After a pause, I looked at him seriously and repeated, "Felix, I don't dislike you. At least after this short period of getting along, the boy I've seen and known is quite nice and there's nothing to dislike about him. Of course, I don't like him either." But I gave him the opportunity to continue approaching me. After the trip, we contacted each other frequently. Gradually, there were also some moments when I felt a bit attracted to him. This kind of attraction wasn't unfamiliar. I used to often have it for Asher too, but it just wasn't as intense as what I felt for Felix. When Felix finally summoned up the courage to formally ask me to be his girlfriend, I agreed. I thought that I really wanted to try dating someone other than Asher. In the past, I regarded love and him as too important. I thought I would only love him, and I had never thought about a second choice other than him. Felix's appearance aroused my eagerness to give it a try. It was strange that Asher hadn't contacted me for such a long time. Although his behavior at this time was a bit unusual, it was okay. Anyway, I didn't want to see him either. If we could tacitly agree to have no contact with each other from now on, it would save a lot of trouble. During the spring festival, since Felix's family was abroad, I thought he was quite pitiful being alone, so I invited him to my home for dinner. I didn't tell my parents about my relationship with him. I just said he was my friend. Anyway, there were many relatives coming to our home tonight, and it wouldn't be awkward to have one more person. Felix tried very hard to behave well in front of my parents. He drank hard with my dad. He couldn't drink but was still forcing himself. I sat beside him, cracking melon seeds and looking at him amusedly. Just then, the doorbell rang. I went to open the door with a smile, but froze when I saw Asher. "Why are you here?" Asher's eyes flickered, and he raised the things in his hand. "I'm here to pay New Year's greetings to Uncle and Auntie, and also to bring some snacks made by my mom." "Oh. I replied indifferently, stepped aside to make way for him. Come in. Perhaps my indifference hurt him. His eyebrows furrowed slightly. Serena. He hesitated to speak, with very complicated eyes. I remembered that at this time in my previous life, he didn't have such complicated eyes. At that time, Asher's eyes were always full of unrestrained, unreserved, and intense love. He loved purely and flamboyantly. Even in front of my parents, he had no scruples about putting his arm around my shoulder. He talked non-stop about how to plan the future wedding, where to spend the honeymoon, how many children to have, and how to arrange for old age. Serena, what's wrong? Felix's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. I felt a bit flustered. I thought I had already put Asher behind me, but I didn't expect that seeing him again could still stir up my emotions so easily. Who is this? Asher's gaze fell on Felix's face as he walked to my side, but he was asking me. Felix smiled slightly and spoke before I could. I'm Serena's boyfriend, Felix. I was stunned for a moment. Felix looked down at me. Can't I say that? Probably because he had drunk some wine, his eyes weren't very clear. He was slightly drunk and had a hint of grievance. I swallowed back what I was originally going to say, took his hand, and said, yes, boyfriend. Felix was happy and raised the corners of his mouth, smiling especially brightly. Asher's face darkened. Boyfriend? He asked me back in disbelief. Serena, don't be silly. I gave him a strange look. What am I being silly about? I'm old enough. What's so strange about having a boyfriend? Well, isn't my boyfriend handsome? Serena. Asher was so angry that the veins on his temples throbbed. I understood him. After all, he should still like me very much at this time. Although, I didn't know why he hadn't contacted me for so long. When did it happen? You clearly didn't long ago. Just recently. I interrupted him and said generously, the trip with you fell through last time. So I went out to play with my classmates. Then he took good care of me. After we came back, we went on a few dates and then got together. Serena. This isn't a joke. Serena, break up with him. I thought Asher was probably so angry that he was incoherent and was in a rage. I sneered. Asher, on what grounds are you asking me to break up with him? My mom heard the noise at the door and came over to take a look. She first welcomed Asher warmly and then asked us curiously, why are you all standing at the door? Come inside. Asher, have you eaten? If not, come and have something at the table. I went to get my coat and Felix's coat and pulled him to go out. Mom, Felix and I are going out to play for a while. After that, Asher said a few words to my mom in a hurry and then chased after us. I pressed the elevator button one step ahead of him and shut him outside the door. So, do you want me to leave? Felix had sobered up a lot. At this moment, he lowered his eyes and his voice was a bit tense. I realized that he had misunderstood. I squeezed his fingers and said with a smile, no, I really want to go out and play with you. Felix looked at me, with waves of emotions in his eyes. Serena, I don't want to play with you for just a while. I want you to accompany me for a longer time. Because of Felix's rare domineering words and since I didn't know what else to do anyway, I walked into the hotel entrance with him. After entering the room, the atmosphere became delicate. Felix was also a bit nervous. I don't mean to do anything with you. I just want to stay with you for a longer time. We can also watch cartoons together. Hearing him say that, the slight awkwardness I felt dissipated, and I burst out laughing. Indeed, compared to the still innocent Felix now, I, with the memories of a past life, should be considered quite experienced. Perhaps it was because I hadn't felt being cared about like this for a long time, or maybe Asher's appearance today had stimulated me. Anyway, at this moment, I really felt a bit soft-hearted towards Felix. With the hazy light, the big bed, and the atmosphere like this, how could we really just watch cartoons? When Felix and I were kissing passionately, suddenly there was a loud banging on the door. Felix asked me to tidy up my clothes and he went to open the door. The moment the door opened, Asher's fist smashed hard into his face. How dare you touch her? This was the first time I heard Asher swear and the first time I saw him hit someone. Not to mention Felix, even I was stunned. Felix reacted and didn't show any weakness either, and started fighting with him. I didn't want to be laughed at by others later, so I rushed over to stop them. Are you crazy? Stop it. I stood in front of Felix, making Asher's fist stop in midair. He clenched his knuckles until they made a cracking sound, staring at my slightly swollen lips from the kiss with pain and anger, and said through gritted teeth, "Serena, how could you do this?" I still cared that he still had feelings for me at this time and knew nothing about the grudges between us, so I still wanted to give him some dignity. I sighed softly and said patiently, "Asher, Felix is my boyfriend. It's normal for us to do any intimate things. On the contrary, you're just my friend. What you've done has already crossed the line and offended us." "Friend?" He slowly put down his hand and sneered. "Serena, I know you blame me and hate me, but you can't use this means to take revenge on me. You're also being irresponsible to yourself." "Why should I blame you, hate you, or take revenge on you?" Facing my rhetorical question, Asher pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Just those obscure and complicated eyes made me suddenly realize something. Yes, how could Asher at this time have such eyes? It was only Asher a long time later who would become so complicated. I was a bit dazed for a moment and then frowned. "Did you also come back?" Asher still didn't say anything. "Did you? You remember everything, you know everything, don't you?" My suddenly out-of-control questioning made Asher panic. He held my shoulders, bent over and coaxed me gently, "Yes, I'm back, and I also know that you're back, so you must hate me, and you don't want to see me. I understand all that. But Serena, this is between us. You can't use others to take revenge on me." I felt as if someone had poured a basin of cold water over me from head to toe. I thought God had given me a chance to start over. I could pretend that nothing had happened without any grudges and choose a new beginning. No one would know that I had once been so stupid as to believe in love. No one knew that Asher and I had a failed marriage. No one knew that I had once been a bitter woman in the marriage. But Asher had also come back, and he knew everything. I didn't even have the chance to pretend not to love him. He knew that he had once trampled on my love. I sneered and pulled my hand out of his forcefully. "Asher, you're so shameless. I do hate you and don't want to see you, but I didn't think of taking revenge on you. I just want to have nothing to do with you for the rest of my life." "What, can't I have another man besides you? If you don't love me anymore, can't others love me? If your love for me has changed, can't I fall in love with someone else?" Asher's eyes changed slightly. He held onto the door frame and asked me, "So, do you love him?" "Of course. What kind of person do you think I, Serena, am? Would I casually go into a hotel with someone I don't love?" As soon as these words came out, Asher's face instantly turned pale, full of hurt and helplessness. Felix was also surprised. After all, this was also the first time I said I loved him. He put away his anger and regained his gentle look. He said to Asher, "Asher, I think you should leave. If you continue to harass my girlfriend, I'll call the security guards up." "Your girlfriend?" Asher looked at Felix with a distorted face as he said this, and then looked at the indifferent me. After a while, he seemed to compromise and let go, took a step back, and looked at me with restraint and said, "If this is your choice, I respect you." I was so upset that I slammed the door hard, blocking his face. There were only Felix and I left in the room. He looked at me with bright eyes. I called the front desk and asked them to send some first aid supplies for treating wounds. I gently stroked the wound on Felix's face, feeling very sorry. After all, he got this undeserved injury because of me. "Don't you have anything you want to ask me?" The conversation between Asher and I just now should have revealed quite a lot of information, which was different from what I had told him before. Felix shook his head. "You said you love me. That's enough." The trust and joy in his eyes made me feel a bit unnatural, and even made me think I was despicable. Yes, Asher was right. I didn't love Felix. At most, I just liked him. I did take advantage of him to some extent. But I thought that Asher didn't know anything at that time, so my taking advantage didn't count. However, he knew. This made my despicableness impossible to hide. Nothing happened between Felix and me that night. We watched cartoons for a long time. I took a quick nap, and got up early in the morning to prepare to go home. I still had to go back and explain to my mom. I moved gently so as not to wake Felix up. When I opened the door, I saw cigarette butts all over the floor. I didn't need to guess who smoked them. I roughly counted them, and there were probably nearly 2 packs. So many. How long had Asher been waiting here? I pursed my lips, closed the door and left in a hurry. But I was startled when I saw Asher at the elevator entrance. He hadn't slept all night. His eyes were bloodshot, stubble had grown on his face, and the smell of cigarettes on him was pungent. He looked haggard and downcast. When he saw me, he walked over, grasped my arm and asked eagerly, "He didn't touch you, right? You didn't do anything, right? What if we did? What if we didn't?" I looked him up and down with a malicious sneer. "Asher, look at yourself in the mirror. You look really awful. Even if we're divorced, didn't you say you didn't love me anymore? What are you doing with all this?" "I didn't say I didn't love you." I impatiently shook off his arm. "For me, if the love has decreased and faded, it means I don't love you anymore." "What if it hasn't decreased?" I was stunned for a moment, and then sneered. "Asher, I won't believe such nonsense anymore. You're just being driven by your possessiveness because I'm with another man." After that day, I confessed to my family that Asher and I had fallen out. Our 2 families had always intended to matchmake Asher and me, and now they could stop. As for Felix, I avoided him for a while and then broke up with him. Now, I'm no longer able to manage a normal relationship. I don't believe anyone's promises and I'm suspicious of everyone. I can't love others the way I loved Asher before. I think it's unfair to him. I'm not the end of his life, and I shouldn't hold him back. After breaking up with Felix, Asher was the happiest one. Yes, he never gave up harassing me. I once wondered if the young Asher was so energetic, and it was only when he reached middle age that his health declined and he lost his enthusiasm. I had made it so clear to him, but he still always came to find me. When he learned that I had broken up with Felix, he even sent me a big gift. He prettily said that it was to congratulate me on coming to my senses. I asked sarcastically, "Asher, do you think I'll get back together with you just because I broke up with Felix?" Asher said, "It's your freedom to choose who to be with. I just hope you make the right decision." He said nice words, but when I started dating someone else again, he went crazy again. However, this time I wasn't trying to get revenge on him. After breaking up with Felix, I really had no interest in dating. I felt that I was incapable of loving and couldn't be interested in anyone. I thought it would be better to focus all my energy on work. It was also during work that I met Aiden. He was different from both Asher and Felix. Asher's love was passionate, flamboyant and dominant. When I was with Asher, he always wanted to stand in front of me and bear everything alone. Felix's love was cautious, timid and inclusive. Aiden was like a teacher and a friend, and also a very skillful lover. He was strict with my work, but he would also teach me a lot of useful things and then push me to face my difficulties alone. If I failed, he would criticize me, find my flaws and patiently teach me again. Afterwards, he would soothe my emotions and take me to relax. He knew about romance and propriety, knew how to listen and share, and made me involuntarily follow his steps. When I was with him, I really put Asher behind me. I was unmoved by any words or actions of Asher. I really didn't care about him at all. Asher probably also realized that this time I really liked Aiden. After going crazy a few times, he didn't come to find me anymore and threw himself into his busy work. However, when Aiden proposed to leave here and settle abroad, and I asked him if he could stay for me, he refused. He asked me to go with him, and I refused too. If it were the old me, the me who hadn't experienced Asher, I would definitely have agreed. Unfortunately, now I'm always a bit more rational. Aiden was originally a rational person, and his rationality was also part of what attracted me, so I didn't blame him. I just felt regretful that another relationship had failed. It seemed that I couldn't escape the curse that love always has an expiration date and couldn't last long with anyone. However, to my surprise, after going through so much, Asher was still alone. There were quite a few girls who liked him. Could it be that none of them caught his eye? He even came to confess his love to me again after learning that Aiden and I had separated. He said, "Serena, look, you've chosen others, and it turned out to be wrong. Why can't you give me a look?" My feelings for him were no longer so intense. When I heard him say such things again, I just teased him with a smile, "But Asher, you were my first wrong choice." Asher was very sad and stubborn. "Serena, doesn't a person who has made mistakes deserve a chance to be forgiven?" I was a husband for the first time, and also managed a marriage for the first time. I thought our relationship was stable enough. I really didn't mean that I didn't love you. But Asher, weren't those your own words? You said that no one's love could always stay at the boiling point. I used to scoff at this, but now I think there's some truth in it. Even I can forget you and love others. Anyway, love has an expiration date for everyone. Asher, why must I love you? Asher's face turned pale. He stubbornly grasped my hand, his eyes full of pain and regret. Serena, don't be like this. I really know I'm wrong. I just blurted out nonsense. At that time, I really was so stupid that I thought I meant what I said. I regretted agreeing to divorce you. I just didn't know how to say it because of my little bit of self-esteem. I blamed you for not understanding me, and I also blamed you for proposing divorce to me. But after going through so much, I finally realized, Serena, I can't live without you. I tried to let you go and choose others, but it was too painful. If you were really happy with others, that would be fine. Since you weren't, why can't you give me another chance? I brushed away his hand and shook my head gently. Asher, you really can't live without me. You're just being driven by possessiveness. You just can't stand that I, who liked you so much, went to like others. No. It's not like that at all. Asher excitedly refuted. If I told you that I slept with Aiden, that we did everything that should and shouldn't have been done, and not just once, would you still think you can't live without me? Asher was stunned. His lips lost their color, and he stared at me blankly. I chuckled and spread my hands. Look, you always think that whatever I do is to get revenge on you. You never really believed that I could like others. But Asher, this is the truth. I really fell in love with someone else. Even if we broke up, maybe I'll fall in love with others again in the future. Once I also thought that I couldn't live without you, but now, it's not the case. Asher remained in a daze until I left. I thought he would really give up this time. But I didn't expect that only a few days later, Asher came to find me again. I couldn't help but be amazed at his perseverance and tolerance. The Asher in my impression was very domineering and really didn't like others using his things. Especially when it came to the person he liked. He had a very serious mental obsession with purity. From the time we met until now, he had never had an ambiguous relationship with other women. But what I had done now should have completely stepped on his minefield. If he still had a shred of self-esteem, he wouldn't come to find me again. Unless, Asher, don't tell me you want to get revenge? You want me to get back together with you, make me like you again, and then hurt me again? I looked at him warily. You wouldn't, right? I never did anything wrong to you when we were together. I was single when I dated others. You shouldn't hold a grudge against me for that, right? Asher couldn't help laughing or crying when he heard this. Am I crazy to get revenge on you? Serena, do you have a heart? Do you think I can get revenge on you now? He pulled his lips self-deprecatingly. Isn't it always you who tortures me? Only then did I notice that Asher had lost a lot of weight. In fact, after I got together with Aiden, Asher's mother came to find me and begged me to go and see Asher, saying that he got drunk at home every day and even had a stomach hemorrhage from drinking. His mother was sad and helpless. She didn't know what had happened between us at all, but she also respected my emotional freedom. Out of respect for his mother, I went to the hospital to see Asher that time, and I was really shocked by his half-dead look. At that time, I said to him harshly, Asher, you'll only make me despise and dislike you more like this. The person I like will never be as humble and downcast as you are. I was also worried that I would make Asher even more dejected, but the effect was surprisingly good. Since then, he had returned to normal. At least he could cheer up and do something meaningful. However, now that he was just one step away from me, I could still smell the tobacco on him. Things were different. When did Asher become so addicted to cigarettes and alcohol? He was really in pain. But why had we come to this point? I was a bit dazed and couldn't figure it out. I also couldn't understand Asher. He was the one who said he didn't love me that much, the one who was cold and perfunctory everywhere, the one who was now humbly begging for peace, and the one who was demeaning himself for me. Serena, I came here today to tell you that my feelings for you are not simply driven by possessiveness. Asher looked at me intently. In my previous life, I told you early on that you were the wife I had long recognized. If I could do it all over again, I would still say the same thing. I won't have anyone else except you. As for you, he hid the bitterness in his eyes and continued, you're disappointed in me. You want to see other sceneries and meet other people. I can give you this freedom. But Serena, could you please be a little less cruel to me? I didn't expect Asher would say something like this. I was a bit at a loss and asked, what should I do to be not cruel to you? At least give me the same chance as others. Don't always be so eager to push me away. Can't you see for yourself whether my sincerity is still worthy of trust before making a decision? Also, what about our Joyce? Are you planning to just abandon her like this? Hearing Joyce's name, I tensed up instinctively. What do you mean? Why did you mention Joyce? Asher's gaze was solemn. Serena, Joyce is our child. I thought I wasn't the only one who would miss her. Of course I remembered that I had this child. Of course I missed her too. But so what? Her story with me had already ended in the previous life. I pretended to be calm and said coldly, Asher, don't try to use the child to play the emotional card. Joyce only existed in the previous life. She has her own life. Does she really? Asher pressed on, how young was she when we left? Whether she grew up safely, whether she was bullied, and what her future life would be like, don't you really want to know? Sorry, Asher took a deep breath. I didn't mean to play the emotional card by saying this. I just simply wanted to talk to you about Joyce, our daughter. I wiped away my tears, feeling both angry and helpless. Don't think that only you care about and miss the child. She's my own flesh and blood. Of course I care about whether she's doing well. But now Joyce doesn't exist in this world. What can I do? Then, wouldn't it be nice to let her exist? What did you say? I thought I had misheard and looked at Asher blankly. Don't erase her. Let her be born into this world and let us watch her grow up safely and smoothly. Wouldn't that be good? I knew it was a trap set by Asher. Maybe he really missed Joyce, but he also really wanted to use Joyce to tie me down. To strengthen the bond between us. Although I thought what he did would be in vain, I could divorce him even when we had a child. What's more, with our broken relationship now, how could it be changed just because of a child? But I still hesitated. Asher was right about one thing. I really cared about whether Joyce grew up safely and whether she was bullied. I really missed her. I also didn't want her existence to be erased. She was such a lively little thing, who would sweetly call me Mommy, and would tell me stories in a childish voice when I was unhappy. She was so lovely and so nice. She was better and more important than any man in this world. I could discard any man, but I shouldn't discard her. But now, I couldn't have anything to do with Asher just to give birth to Joyce. Finally, we went for in vitro fertilization. At this point, I was more convinced that Asher really missed our daughter. After the child was born, Asher took care of her as closely as he did in the previous life. In fact, he did even better and was more skillful than in the previous life. Both of our parents were very happy to know that we had a child and kept urging us to get married quickly. I said to Asher, the child has already been born. You can come to visit her often in the future. It's time for you to live your own life. Asher was making milk powder for the child without looking up. I'm living my own life right now. What I mean is that you should meet new people and have a new love and marriage. Only then did Asher look at me and said seriously, I've said that you're the only one for me. What if I never agree to you for my whole life? Then I'll live alone until I die. I was left speechless. After a while, I rolled my eyes in annoyance. Then go live alone until you die. Asher curved his lips and patiently changed the baby's diaper, humming a song at the same time. I turned over to face away from him, clutching the quilt and thinking angrily, let's see. The last marriage only lasted for 15 years. I don't believe you can really waste your whole life with me. Asher seemed to be able to read my mind and said quietly, don't worry. This time, I'm sure I'll stay with you for the rest of my life. The end. After today, I will start a new life. Why should I let myself fall into an abyss from which there is no escape for people who have nothing to do with me? It's still because they never regarded me as a human being. I said to myself, perhaps I wasn't meant to have a life at all. The two of them were incoherent and stared at me fiercely. You little beast. How dare you defy me and even scold me? I'll beat you to death today. I deliberately provoked them again, go ahead and beat me to death. Then you'll be satisfied. You can just say that I was too ashamed to face others and committed suicide. The two of them looked at each other. I could even imagine the miserable situation I might face next. Yvonne was the first to come up. She grabbed my hair with one hand and kept slapping me with the other. Sam stood aside, rolling up his sleeves, eager to join in. Just then, the doorbell rang. Open the door quickly. We're the police. Yes, it was I who called the police. It's like killing 1,000 enemies while losing 800 of your own. But this was already the best way I could think of. Looking at my swollen face, the broken pots, bowls, and dishes on the ground, and the recording of the conversation just now, there was no doubt about the abuse and abandonment. But it wasn't enough yet. The knives and scissors placed on the ground were not just about abuse, they were suspected of intentional homicide. Especially that sentence, all right, I'll kill you right now to avoid future troubles. It was even more solid evidence of the crime of intentional homicide. Unsurprisingly, what awaited them should be a long prison life. In my free time, I wrote my experiences into a novel and posted it online. Unexpectedly, many people followed it. What surprised me even more was that I actually earned quite a lot of income from it. People were talking about it a lot, and there were all kinds of opinions. Wow, is that really her biological mother? I think a paternity test could be done secretly. This family is so evil. I can't believe they could come up with such things. They're really vicious. If they were my parents, I'd poison them directly. Although I didn't mention specific names, the clever netizens still guessed roughly what had happened. I think even if they had a chance to get out in this lifetime, they would already be completely and thoroughly socially dead. As for Mia, after her scandal was exposed, she blatantly stayed with the married man. One day, the married man said that he would run away with her to escape the current noise. I smiled. I knew that the butcher in the mountains had already sharpened his knife. Before leaving, she specifically asked to meet me. How could I miss the last meeting? What's the point of you harming others without benefiting yourself? Teacher Wang and I have decided to run away. At most, people will say that I'm a love-struck fool, while you'll only become a vicious and ungrateful person in others' mouths who even harms her own parents and family. I scratched my head and looked helpless. Then what should I do? How about I say sorry to you guys? She became angry out of shame. Do you think it's so great that you got into college? A vicious and scheming girl like you will never be loved by a man in this lifetime. I sneered. So you're very happy now? She looked smug. Of course. Then she handed me a glass of orange juice, the same orange juice as in my previous life. I couldn't help shivering. Why don't you drink it? Are you afraid it's poisoned? It seemed that she wanted me to experience the same thing again. I raised my eyebrow slightly and took out a thermos cup from my bag. I drink wolfberry water for health. The flash of disappointment in her eyes once again confirmed my guess. I heard that they ran away that very day. It was a month later when the police found her whereabouts. It was I who called the police and provided the clues. However, her complete body wasn't found. Her DNA was extracted from the pressure cooker used for cooking meat. Half-eaten hands were found in the stinking pigsty. The scene of my tragic death in my previous life reappeared in front of my eyes again. I don't know if someone like her would have a chance to be reborn. I think she should be doomed forever. The butcher and the married man were sentenced to death and executed immediately for intentional homicide. The cold wind was blowing and dark clouds covered the sun, but my heart was burning hot and the world in front of me was clear and unobstructed. On the eve of my engagement to Ryan, he fell in love with Arya, the adopted daughter of the Arya family, and insisted on breaking off our engagement. I told the elders about this matter. As a result, Arya died in a plane crash on her way to being sent abroad. 10 years later, Ryan became the richest man in City B. He bankrupted the Nora family and I was imprisoned in the basement by him and tortured to death. Ryan said, "This is what I owe Arya." When I woke up again, it was the day when the two families were discussing our engagement. My father asked for my opinion and I said, "Since Ryan doesn't want to be engaged to me, let's just forget about this marriage." I sincerely hoped Ryan can have a happy ending with the person he loves. After being reborn, I was sitting at the banquet where we were discussing the engagement with Ryan and I watched Ryan oppose the engagement. Ryan was the fiancé chosen for me by my parents. In my father's eyes, he was a perfect match for an arranged marriage, a man with excellent academic and moral qualities in all aspects. But in fact, he was a businessman who didn't want to be bound by his family and was ruthless and vicious. He pretended to be harmless while hiding his true strength and deceived many people. As long as he wanted something, he would get it by any means. He was even less willing to have anyone go against his choices or even try to control him. While I was thinking, Ryan's straightforward words came from across the table, "I already have someone I like. I won't marry Nora." Ryan's disgusted eyes fell on me unabashedly across the dining table. So he disliked me so much. How stupid I was in my previous life. In my past life, I didn't take Ryan's words to heart because I knew that for a marriage between wealthy families, it wouldn't be cancelled just because of his words. I just said to Ryan's parents, "Uncle and Aunt, I hope you can handle this as soon as possible. Don't delay the schedule." In this way, Arya was sent on a plane abroad by the Arya family, and then the plane crashed and Arya died. Ryan and I got married as originally planned, and it was also the beginning of the tragedy for the Nora family. At first, Ryan really did a good job. My father appreciated him very much and handed over most of the power to Ryan. Later, before I knew it, Ryan had emptied the Nora family. My father couldn't bear the blow and died of a heart attack. My mother was also depressed because of my father's death and passed away not long after. I was the only one left to endure Ryan's revenge. Every day, he whipped himself in the basement. And he especially liked to torture me in bed, enjoying the way I begged him for mercy. When I couldn't bear it anymore, I could only helplessly scratch his back, but in return, he would use even more force. He liked my tears very much because he thought it was my confession for the dead Arya. Later, he thought such punishment was too light and began to pour salt water on the whip marks or soak himself in alcohol. Most of the time, I wasn't allowed to wear clothes because Ryan wanted to destroy my self-esteem. Those memories were deeply engraved in my bones. Looking at Ryan's eyes, I couldn't help shrinking my body. Coming to my senses, I said to my parents, "Since Ryan doesn't want to be engaged to me, let's forget about this marriage. Our family won't force others to do something they don't want to. I don't lack Ryan as an engagement partner either." At the same time, I sincerely hoped Ryan can have a happy ending with the person he loves. "Uncle and Aunt, if there's nothing else, we'll leave first." As soon as I walked out of the private room, I saw Arya standing not far away. She was really clingy and couldn't wait for a moment. I ignored Arya and let my parents go first. Sure enough, Arya caught up and said provocatively, "Nora, Ryan is mine. You'd better be sensible." Before I could say anything, Arya's words changed again. "Sister Nora, I didn't mean to bump into you. Please don't blame me. I just hope you can give Ryan back to me." Before I could say anything, Ryan, who was following us, arrived. Without even asking, He just assumed that I was bullying his precious Arya and said directly, "Nora, what are you doing? Arya has nothing to do with you. There's no need for you to deal with a young girl like this. If you have any complaints, come to me." I looked at Ryan and said loudly, "I'll say it again. I didn't bump into Arya. Believe it or not. If there's nothing else, please get out of the way. I'm going home." Ryan was stunned for a moment. So Nora had such a temper. It was the same in my previous life. Ryan firmly stood in front of Arya to protect her. Regardless of what his parents said, he insisted on breaking off the engagement. I was young and impulsive at that time, so naturally, I wouldn't let Arya off easily. I directly asked people to throw Arya out so that she wouldn't be an eyesore. This was the beginning of the estrangement between us. Thinking of this, I looked straight at Ryan and said sternly, "Ryan, we're not engaged, and I have no reason to do anything to Arya. Instead of this, you'd better keep Arya in check and don't let her come near me for no reason." "Nora, you speak nicely. Who was the one who pestered me before? You're not qualified to tell me what to do or to lecture me. Understand?" Ryan looked at me with a warning look and said. Arya, who liked to watch the excitement and make things worse, added fuel to the fire and pretended to say, "I'm sorry, Ryan. I know Sister Nora likes you very much. I'm okay. Please don't blame her." Why didn't I realize before that Arya was such a scheming person and could pretend so much? She's even too much for a trash can. Then I rubbed my temples that were about to burst with my hand and said to Ryan with a bit of tiredness, Nora, admit that I did like you before, but Mr. Ryan, please rest assured that after today, I won't like you anymore. As for Arya, Mr. Ryan, you can also be completely at ease. As long as Arya doesn't provoke me, I promise she'll be fine." The moment I sat at the dining table, my dream about Ryan should have ended. "Ryan, this time, I'm letting you go." I still remember that after this day in my previous life, Ryan's parents privately contacted Arya's family and demanded that Arya be sent abroad or they would take action against the Arya family. Arya blamed all of this on me and came to me privately. "Nora, it's all your fault. Why did you get engaged to Ryan? Could you please give him back to me? I really like Ryan. Please give him to me. Don't let my father send me abroad. I'm begging you." What did I do? Oh, right, I asked the people from the Nora family to send Arya out. As a result, Ryan came to me that afternoon. I was inexplicably scolded. "Nora, I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Arya just likes me. What's wrong with her? You even asked your people to beat her and tried to ruin her innocence. How evil your heart is. If I hadn't arrived in time, Arya would have been ruined by you." What a big accusation he put on me. I was also angry at that time, so I said, "Arya is really lucky. She's okay even after all this. I just dislike her." "What can you do? Kill me." Ryan immediately grabbed my neck when he heard this. I saw the killing intent in his eyes. He really wanted me to die. Later, he let go of his hand, leaving me gasping and coughing continuously. When I calmed down and regained I thought that since I didn't do those things, I should clarify them, so I directly hired a private detective to investigate. It was also under such circumstances that Ryan was put under house arrest by his parents, and the Arya family sent Arya abroad overnight. The investigation results just arrived in my hands, and before I could send them to Ryan to see, the news of the plane crash came the next day. In the end, this matter was never resolved. Regarding the marriage alliance between the two families, I thought at that time that it was probably going to be cancelled. After all, in Ryan's eyes, I was directly responsible for Arya's death. But contrary to expectations, Ryan acted as if nothing had happened. After being released from the restriction, he still got engaged to me as usual. I was so stupid that I couldn't see the calculation and disgust in Ryan's eyes. What I need to do now is to persuade my parents to give up the idea of the marriage alliance. When I got home, my father and mother asked me why I said those words at the dinner table. I couldn't tell them about my rebirth, so I just said that I wanted to focus on our family's business now. Seeing that I was determined, my parents didn't say anything in the end. The next day, relying on my memories from my previous life, I went to the restaurant to meet Leo. In my previous life, because of my family situation and the fact that I did have a crush on Ryan, I rejected Leo, who happened to propose to marry me when we met the next day. After all, anyone would do. Why couldn't it be him? I remember that I was very surprised at that time. After all, I wasn't very familiar with Leo. I just said that I really liked Ryan, so I planned to get married. Then Leo said that he hoped I would be happy and that I could ask him for help if I had any problems in the future, and he left me a phone number. Later, I told Ryan about this, and Ryan said to stay away from Leo because he didn't have good intentions. Now that I think about it, there were many things I didn't know, but one thing was certain: Leo wouldn't harm me. Leo wasn't in business. He was in politics, but few people knew about it. After all, who would have thought that the son of the governor would wear cheap clothes during his 4 years in college, just like an ordinary college student? Leo was really good at enduring. At that time, he had just started working in the government department, and not many people knew about him. When I heard about Leo again, it was from Ryan. At that time, I had already been restricted in my movements. There was a big problem with the company, and the person sent to investigate was Leo. As soon as I arrived at the restaurant, I ran into Arya and Ryan. What's going on? Ryan didn't show up here in my previous life. Arya saw me first and came up to me. Nora, didn't you say you wouldn't pester Ryan? Why are you here? I'm here to talk about something. Do I have to report to you too? Ryan, yesterday Nora said she wouldn't pester you, but today she's here to block us. Her lie is so clumsy. Arya, don't worry. Nora, won't compete with you for a man. After all, it's not worth it. Nora, no matter what you do, Ryan, will never like you. Please give up, Miss Nora. I knew that some people could be thick-skinned, but I didn't expect to meet someone even thicker-skinned than the wall in my lifetime. So I retorted, is this road opened by your family? Why are you so nosy? I said I'm here to talk about something. Believe it or not. A good dog doesn't get in the way. Ryan, look at her. Okay, Arya. Don't let someone like this affect our mood for having dinner. After dinner, I'll accompany you to go shopping, okay? Didn't you take a fancy to several new bags? I'll buy them all for you later. Ryan is so nice to me. Then let's eat quickly. Don't let irrelevant people affect our mood. Nora, why are you still standing outside instead of coming in? The voice came from not far away in the restaurant, and then the person walked up to us. It was Leo. What's going on? It seems so tense. Just dealing with a small matter. It's already okay. Sorry I'm late, Leo. It's okay. I just arrived too. The final result was good. The child was okay. It's just that the surveillance video was taken from a bit of a distance, and only 2 people arguing could be seen. Then Arya fell into the water and struggled. I immediately jumped in to save her. Ryan watched the video. For some reason, he was a bit silent. Whatever. As long as I could prove my innocence, it would be okay. Since there was nothing else going on, I left first. I thought that everything would come to an end here, but I was overthinking it. After I had been dating Leo for a few months, we both felt that we got along well. Then on a sunny and beautiful night, he proposed to me. He played my favorite piano piece, which somehow sounded quite familiar to me. I was so happy that I accepted Leo's proposal among the blessings of everyone. Just at this time, Arya came to me again. I asked her what was wrong. She looked so haggard. Sister Nora, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I shouldn't have claimed your identity falsely. Could you please plead with Ryan on my behalf and ask him to let my family off? I don't want anything else. I just want my family to be okay. I was confused. You need to explain clearly, or how can I help you? Under Arya's stuttering explanation, I understood the whole story. When I was in college, I happened to save Ryan, who had fallen into the water. Logically speaking, as an adult male, how could he be afraid of water? In my last life, I didn't figure it out until we got married. When Ryan was a child, he was kidnapped. There were other rich young masters kidnapped with him. However, that person was rather stubborn. He didn't know how to lower his stance in front of the kidnappers and even gave them orders. Finally, the kidnappers lost their patience and drowned him by pressing him into the water. Ryan witnessed the whole scene until he grew up. He had a shadow over large areas of water, so much so that he couldn't swim, and I just happened to save him by chance. But because I had other things to do and was in a hurry to leave, I left after making sure he was okay. It was at this time that Arya took my place. No wonder in the last life she felt that the feelings between the two of them came out of nowhere. Last time, Arya was so focused on framing me that she forgot this crucial thing. So, Ryan's reaction last time was strange. But why did he know it was me? I looked at the trembling Arya. Her belly was already showing. I really couldn't say harsh words to a pregnant woman. I could only tell her to go home first and that I would talk to Ryan. Leo stood beside me and asked me if I needed him to accompany me. I shook my head and told him that I could handle it. You don't still have feelings for him, do you? I shook my head again, put my arms around his waist, and leaned against his chest. After a while, I whispered, I'm just a bit sentimental. How could the person I liked so much before turn out like this? Leo rubbed my head. Things in this world are always changing. It's not something you can decide. By the way, you can play the piano. How come I didn't know that? I've known how to play for a long time. I just played less after graduating from high school. Well, I'll tell you something. Don't mind it. Go ahead. Let me hear it. Do you know why I liked Ryan? Why? When I was in senior 3 of high school, I was a bit rebellious. My parents hoped that I would apply to schools abroad, but I hoped to study in China. Because of this, I had a lot of quarrels with my parents. The most serious time, I ran away from home. It's a bit like a middle school girl with a bit of naivety. Don't interrupt me. Let me finish. Since I didn't want to go home, I went back to school to live in advance. It was at this time that I heard someone playing the piano in the music room. The sound was so beautiful that I couldn't help but go and peek through the window. Then you saw Ryan? No. It was a bit far away. Besides, I was nearsighted at that time and didn't wear glasses, so I could only recognize a figure roughly. However, I still remember that the setting sun shone in through the window, making the figure inside look rather hazy, and then I had a shameful crush. How could you be sure that person was Ryan? Don't laugh at me when I tell you. I asked someone to inquire on the campus website. It cost me a lot of money. Then what piece did he play at that time? Wedding in a Dream. I searched for it for a long time later. In my last life, even after getting married, I wanted to hear him play it again, but I never got my wish. Was there any noise at that time? Yes. Since I was peeping, it was my first time and I had no experience. I was discovered and ran away quickly. I accidentally bumped my leg and there's still a scar on it now. Later, I kept chasing after him. By chance, I saved him, but I didn't get to talk to him. I regretted it for a long time. Did you drop your student ID card at that time? How did you know? Fool, you've mistaken the person from the beginning to the end. That person was me. Are you sure you're not joking? I went there to look for my grandma at that time. I didn't know the way and ended up at the music room. It happened that the school arranged a performance, so I practiced. I didn't expect to catch a peeper. When I came out, only a student ID card was left on the ground. I always wanted to return it, but then nothing happened after that. I looked at the person in front of me in surprise. Then how about I play it for you again now? You can judge for yourself. Before I could react, the familiar notes came out again. It seemed that I was back in the scene of that day. The difference was that the person in my memory was looking at me through the gap of the piano, focused and full of tenderness. It filled the longing in my heart for decades. It turned out that I had been mistaking the person all along. I was so silly. When the music ended, tears flowed down my face. I ran to hug Leo, buried my face in his chest, and cried, "Sorry for keeping you waiting, Leo. Why didn't you say anything? Fool, I just simply hoped that you could do what you wanted to do. Moreover, you can't deny that you really liked Ryan more than me back then. Even though you mistook the person first, your feelings during those years of chasing were real, so I chose not to disturb you. Did Ryan always know that I mistook the person? He's been lying to me all along. While enjoying my pursuit, he trampled on my feelings. I don't know about that. During those years, I watched you chasing Ryan all over the place. I felt so sorry for you. But I didn't have the right to disturb you. Suddenly, I felt that I was so sad in my last life. I was so stupid and was used by others. Ryan, you're really something. At the same time, I was very lucky that I made the right choice in this life. The next day, I sorted out my thoughts and drove directly to the Ryan family's group to see Ryan. As expected, I was politely invited in. Ryan was sitting on the sofa, not at all surprised. Here you are. Take a seat. Let's be straightforward and not beat around the bush. Why are you suppressing Arya's family? Just because Arya lied to you? Don't forget that she's pregnant with your child now. So what? Miss Nora, what are you here to say today? To ask me to let Arya's family off? Ryan looked at me and said with a smile. It's not impossible. Break up with Leo and get engaged to me, and then I'll let Arya's family off. I was so angry that I laughed. I just thought he was crazy and stood up to leave directly. I don't care anymore. They can do whatever they want. I won't get involved. Actually, I didn't have to care in the first place. If it weren't for seeing Arya's belly and being reminded of the child I didn't have in my last life and feeling a bit of pity, why should I wade into this muddy water? Isn't my life comfortable enough? Do I have to make myself suffer? Before I reached the door, I was pulled back. I wasn't on guard and was pulled into his arms all of a sudden. Ryan held my waist tightly, and his voice came from above my head. Nora, let's start over again. My body stiffened for a moment. This was how he called me in my last life. I must have heard it wrong. Nora, I regret it. I shouldn't have gotten engaged to Arya. Fortunately, we haven't got married yet. There's still room for redemption. This time, I definitely didn't hear it wrong. He was indeed calling me Nora. When I realized it, I started to struggle and said, Ryan, if you're sick, go get treated. Don't hang around me. Since you rejected me at our two families' engagement banquet, there's no possibility for us. It was you who told me to stay away from you. There's no one in this world who must revolve around someone else. After chasing you for all these years, I'm tired. I beg you to let me go. Ryan retorted sharply, you liked me so much. How could you just let it go like that? I don't believe it. I slapped him directly and said sternly, during these years, if you had just looked back once, even just once, I would have waited for you. But you didn't. It was you who pushed me to others. Now you regret it. I tell you, it's too late. He wanted to come and hug me, but I dodged. I was afraid that he would see through something, so I had to continue acting. Sorry, Nora, I know I was wrong. Please give me one more chance. During these years, I've given you countless chances, but you didn't seize them. Instead, you hurt me again and again. I'm also a human being. My heart can also hurt. This heart has been completely broken by you. What else do you want? Do you have to break it into pieces to be happy? No, I can make it up. No need. I feel disgusted. Besides, something that's already broken, even if it's put together again, there will still be cracks. Ryan, you just can't accept that you were cheated for a moment. But didn't you also cheat me? We're even now. You knew from the beginning that I mistook the person, but you never said anything. I have to say, you're really good at acting. You've been acting for 7 or 8 years. Aren't you tired? Or do you enjoy the feeling when I'm chasing you and the superiority when you're being held high by the eldest daughter of the Nora family? In the end, you even believed it yourself. Forgot that you're just a thief. You know everything. Yes, I know everything. Since it was wrong from the start, everything should be put back to its original place. I won't let go. Unless I die. Then go ahead and die. Do whatever you want. I don't care. I just hope that you'll be kind to the people around you who truly love you and don't make the same mistakes again. One more thing, don't even die in front of me. I find it inauspicious. I walked out of the Ryan family's group company a bit nervously. Leo was waiting for me downstairs. Seeing him, I finally felt at ease. I didn't pay attention to what happened afterwards. Arya never came to me again either. I had already started choosing my wedding dress. Leo watched me try on wedding dresses beside me. He said every dress looked nice. I joked, "Why don't you buy them all then?" He was stunned for a moment, and then got up to pay with his card. I quickly stopped him. It was too wasteful. No way. I should be in charge of the money in the future. On the eve of my wedding, Arya found me again, which surprised me a little. She had actually aborted the baby. I asked her, "Are you okay?" She nodded and then shook her head. "What do you mean? I don't understand." I sipped my coffee and waited for her to speak. Until she threw something at me, and then I lost consciousness. When I woke up again, I was in a villa. It was very familiar. It was the place where I had been imprisoned in my previous life. I felt the clothes on me. Fortunately, they hadn't been touched. I breathed a sigh of relief in my heart. Then I just stayed still, huddled in the corner with my legs hugged. I knew that Ryan must be watching me, and I prayed in my heart that Leo would come quickly. I was someone who had already died once. How could I have no sense of precaution at all? During this period of time, I was busy with the wedding preparations and also secretly keeping an eye on the Arya family. Since Arya was dragged by Ryan to the hospital forcibly to have an abortion, I knew that he wouldn't let go. However, I couldn't take the initiative. I could only wait for him to make the first move. I was taking a gamble, betting on my position in his heart. Several days passed like this. I neither resisted nor made a fuss about getting out, but Ryan still didn't show up. I even doubted whether I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't Ryan who kidnapped me. Until tonight, he finally showed up. I didn't know how to reply to his first sentence. "Nora, you've also been reborn, right? How did he figure it out? Where did I go wrong?" I was thinking in my heart about how to answer. "Stop pretending. You're not good at acting. It's too fake. I'm really curious. How did you figure it out?" "Your eyes. I saw them so many times in my previous life that I can tell that. Do you know why I locked you up here?" I asked him why. When people are in an unfamiliar environment, they will panic. The moment you opened your eyes, there was a look of understanding in them. Although you pretended well afterwards, I still recognized it at a glance. When we met at the group company last time, I had my suspicions. This time, it's confirmed. So? Why did you kidnap me here? To make myself give up. I was full of confusion. If it was just you in this world, I would still have a chance to compete with Leo, but if you, like me, are reborn, I don't have any chance at all. I know that. Hearing Ryan say this, I relaxed. "Ryan, do you know that in my previous life, during the month when you were abroad, I got pregnant?" Ryan was stunned. He didn't know about this at all. "Later, I wanted to tell you about this, but by that time, you had already annexed our family. Everyone knew that you didn't like me. When I was attending a banquet, I was accidentally bumped to the ground and sent to the hospital. At that time, I called you, hoping that you could come back to accompany me. Do you know what you said?" He didn't remember. He had said too many hurtful words to Nora in his previous life. He was such an asshole. "You said, wait until I'm about to die, and then notify you. Don't bother me if there's nothing wrong. People like me won't be favored by heaven. Even if I had a child, it would die." You were right. The child couldn't be saved and left. And what was he doing at that time? It seemed that it was the anniversary of Arya's death. He went to the place where her plane crashed to see her. "Stop talking. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. What else do you want to hear?" "I'll tell you everything. By the way, your mistress in the company later also came to me. She thought that since I was just occupying the title of Mrs. Ryan in vain, I might as well give it to her. And your mother, after we had been married for many years and I hadn't given birth to a child for you, forced me to drink some folk remedies she found from who knows where every day for more than 5 years. But she didn't know that after my miscarriage, I couldn't be a mother anymore." "I told you to stop talking. Nora," Ryan shouted. "During the 10 years we lived together, if you had just asked once, you would have known that I was living a miserable life. But from the beginning to the end, you didn't even spare me a glance. Most of the time, there was only disgust in your eyes for me. The only time you looked at me was when you were consumed by lust in bed, but I knew that it was fake. Logically speaking, these were all things from my previous life. My heart shouldn't ache anymore, but why were there tears in my eyes? So, let me go in this life, Ryan. I'm really tired. I've done enough for you. He didn't answer me. He just asked me to cook a meal for him. I didn't want to dwell on revenge or anything like that. There was no point in hating back and forth. I cooked the dishes he liked according to my memories of my previous life. In my previous life, most of these dishes ended up in the trash can. But now he ate them happily, yet I didn't care about it anymore. In the evening, he sent me out of the door. Leo was waiting for me outside. Before I left, he said to me, "Nora, be happy in this life." I didn't say anything and walked straight towards my lover. For 2 lifetimes, he had waited long enough. In the end, I didn't sue Arya, nor did I take Ryan to court. It wasn't because I didn't care, but precisely because I cared too much. So I wanted them to live in this world filled with guilt, especially Ryan. For the rest of his life, he would live in infinite remorse for what he had done to me in my previous life. I wanted him to watch with his own eyes as I, Nora, happily married Leo and lived a healthy and blissful life in the second half of my life. Besides, in my previous life, the Ryan family had problems in the later stage. At that time, even the combined forces of the Shao and Shi families' companies couldn't handle it, let alone now when there was only the Ryan family left. Watching the prey struggle and die bit by bit, wasn't that process more interesting? A few days before the wedding, I sent invitations to the Ryan family. In the end, only Ryan's parents came. And a few years after I got married, I learned that Leo had always been thinking about getting back at Ryan. I conveniently sent some information to Leo. Moreover, in recent years, because of his guilt from the previous life, Ryan had given up many projects to me. Of course, I accepted them all. This was what he owed me and my child. There was no reason to turn it down. The final result was just as I wished. The Ryan family suffered heavy losses due to project problems and someone embezzling public funds. All of a sudden, they were severely weakened and forced to withdraw from the stage of history. It was said that Ryan had to serve several years in prison. During that period, Ryan wanted to see me, but I refused. I sent a message in, "Ryan, you brought all this upon yourself. Don't disturb my peaceful life anymore. I hope we'll never see each other again in this life." As for Arya, after leaving Ryan, she hooked up with another rich second-generation heir. However, the age of this rich second-generation heir was old enough to be her father, and he already had a wife. I heard a few days ago that she was beaten. How pitiful. Today is my big wedding day. Leo played "Wedding in a Dream" for me again at the wedding. I happily walked towards my lover with my bouquet. The wedding was broadcast live. Ryan watched the beautiful Nora on the screen. He knew that he would never fall in love with anyone else in this life. Because he had lost his most precious treasure, the kind that he could never get back in his lifetime. It was something stolen in the first place. He was lucky enough to seize it in his previous life, but he didn't cherish it. Wasn't it only right that he lost it in this life? He laughed at himself, and as he laughed, tears came out. "Nora, I regret it, but you won't give me another chance." The end.